Hello, welcome to a brand new video. I'm very excited to be sharing this artwork with you called Gathering Flowers. So let's make a little sculptural illustration together. I'm going to take you through the process, through my thoughts and feelings and everything in between. So I started this piece with this wooden leaf dish. Over the years at op shops / thrift shops, I have managed to collect a bunch of these leaf platters, you know, big in the 70s, I suppose. But the other day I found this leaf at the op shop and I was like, back on my leaf bandwagon. But yeah, this time I kind of decided to do something about it, to do something with this. So I opened up my sketchbook, did some drawing. I've been playing with this pen a lot lately. It's just, you know, typical fountain pen with a little angled nib. Very fun to use. I like being kind of like messy and loose with it. Yeah, so I've been looking at some embroidery lately. I've been doing some little drawings and I did these little graphic flowers and I thought, oh, cute. Let me just like go back and revisit some of my old illustrations, and I found this drawing of a little bug carrying a big flower over its shoulder. So here I am kind of redrawing that illustration from ages ago. I didn't film myself looking through my old sketchbook, but anyway, this is basically what it looked like anyway in my old sketchbook. And yeah, I did some little doodles, did some drawing, and my kind of plan was no plan. My original plan with this piece was to just paint the leaf and kind of flatten it out with a really thick layer of gesso as a base. I wanted to make the leaf nice and smooth. I wanted to get rid of all the little ridges that have been carved into this leaf dish. And yeah, I was planning on just illustrating a flat picture directly on top of the leaf. After struggling to get the gesso open, I finally got it open and gave it a bit of a mix up and stuff. As I was working on making the base layer of this leaf, putting the gesso down and whatnot, I found it really difficult to disguise the little leaf grooves. I ended up doing so many different layers. I put it in the sun to dry it again, although I took my hairdryer into the room to keep drying it so that I could keep adding layers to just like compact the gesso into the spaces where the ridges of the leaf were. But yeah, I really struggled to actually get it super duper smooth. So I kind of like ended up with a very textured leaf. There's always time for big smoochy kissy cuddles of BB whenever I'm making art. I love that my studio looks onto the backyard and BB usually sits there on that patch of grass and watches me. So I've spent the day on and off doing I think I've done about 5 really thick layers, and it still is showing the little shape of the leaf pattern underneath. So I think I'm going to do like another really thick chunky layer, let it dry overnight, and then in the morning I might sand it back and see if that removes any of these little ridges. If not, maybe I will just use some putty, or like, I don't know. Like I've done a really thick bit here. Maybe I just go mega thick like that. It's going to get heavier. But yeah, I mean, as nice as the patterns are, I want to have a clean slate. But yeah, let's just do one more layer and see how it looks in the morning. Okay, next morning I've just started sanding it, but again, you can still see all the little grooves of the leaf line. So I'm gonna like just sand it a little bit and see if that does anything. If not, I think it'll be fine. I think it'll be fine once I like paint it all. You won't be able to see it as much. And I can still use the grooves of the leaf lines to, you know, I'll incorporate them somehow. But yeah, I'm just going to do a quick little sand. All I could find is this sandpaper. I don't actually have any sandpaper on hand, and I can't be bothered going to the shops. So yeah, let's see how we go with this. Okay, I sanded it a little bit, but it was too hard. I have repetitive strain injury and it was hurting me too much. So I'm just gonna like leave it lumpy and textured, I think. I mean, I like textured artwork anyway, so I think it'll be nice. Yeah, I'm just wondering if because this is kind of like the idea I have for the illustration I want to put on it. I'm wondering if I should make like a little 3D elements out of Super Sculpey and stick them on and make a little 3D kind of artwork. It might be cute. Is that too much work? Sort of like combining sculpture and illustration. Might be nice. I don't know. Yeah. It makes sense because then it can go over the lines of the leaf and like adds extra texture and stuff. Let me have a think. So while I was sanding it back, I was observing all the textures and I thought, let's do something different than just painting directly on it. How can I disguise all these little grooves? I used to study animation, and stop motion animation was my favorite thing in the world. So I used to do a lot of stop motion and build and make sets and characters and stuff like that. So I was sparked with the inspiration to make a more sculptural illustration. I love illustration, like 3D illustrations. There were books when I was a kid that were beautiful textural sculptural photographs telling the story of whatever it was. I think it was like through a window or something like that. There was this beautiful picture book and it was all pointing out the window and everything was like hand painted and handmade and just so inspiring. I used to love it. I used to devour it when I was a kid all the time. So yeah, I've been very inspired by my stop motion days and just like sculptural illustration in general. So while I was making this, I remembered how much I loved sculpture. I feel like I kind of fell into an illustration, art making, kind of flat painting kind of realm over the last few years or decade and kind of forgotten a bit about sculpture. I mean, several years ago I got into ceramics and that is amazing. I love ceramics and it definitely like scratched an itch that I had and I love it, but ceramics is just a lot more difficult, a lot more involved, a lot more like sciencey, chemistry kind of stuff, I don't know, going on there. So one thing I was loving about playing with this Super Sculpey while I was making this was that it's so easy to control. It's so immediate. I can just pop it in the oven and bake it up and yeah, then play with it. So I am just like, I don't know, fumbling my way through remembering how to use Super Sculpey. I don't have any fancy tools or anything. These are just my old janky paintbrushes and ceramic tools that I've been using, just kind of learning as I go. This is a sculptural illustration, but it is kind of flat in the same breath. Like a lot of the leaf, the character, they're all kind of flat in their own way, but then they build up different layers and textures as I am arranging them onto the leaf. But yeah, I don't know, I just had a big burst of joy making this because I was like harking back to my childhood and my teenhood when I used to make stuff all the time. I always had blue tack in my hands, I always had plasticine, I always had cardboard and tape and paper mache and all that kind of stuff while, you know, in class or when I get home, always building, making, sculpting stuff. So I was really just channeling my childhood version of myself. So this point of the piece, I have already baked all the individual elements, kind of like arranged them in a way that I thought would be nice, then baked them and then rearranged them to how, you know, to make it all really flow and feel good. The glue is called E6000 and a lot of jewelers and ceramicists use it. I wasn't sure if it would work with the gesso and the Super Sculpey, but it worked pretty well. And yeah, I just stuck everything down. I took my time to arrange things really nicely. I really love playing with rhythm and flow and balance, and I really like people's eyes to be taking on a little journey and to bounce around a little bit. So I had a lot of fun putting it all together and arranging it in a way that makes me feel happy. Okay, it's the next morning after I glued everything in place using the E6000 glue, which I've used up. I don't know if it's the right kind of glue, but we'll see what happens. I had one casualty where this flower came off. It was actually this one. I had slotted this little loop into the stem, and it snapped because it was just like the flower was too heavy and this thing is too weak. So I did a little, I don't know, surgery on this one, and I hope it's okay. It's a little bit, I don't know, the flow is a little bit more wonky, but I'm thinking maybe if I even just attach a little blob there, it kind of like counterbalances the wonky flow, but we will see. On this flower, I'm going to test the gesso as a base, which I don't think will work very well. I feel like it'll be very streaky and textured, but I don't know. I mean, the whole leaf is pretty streaky and textured anyway, so maybe it'll go with it. With my acrylic paint, when I'm actually painting and illustrating the thing, I can like achieve some texture there. With the gesso, it's a lot more fiddly. Yeah. Even though it's a bit streaky and takes a bit longer, it's just going to be a base layer, so once I paint over with my actual acrylic paint, you won't see the streakiness. Yeah. So once I was happy with my little tests, I went ahead and started painting, this is the bit I was really excited about originally. When I first got the leaf, I was like, yes, I'm gonna paint it, gonna illustrate on it. I hadn't necessarily planned the sculptural part of it, so it's like I added this whole extra massive step, finally getting to the painting part of it now. There we go, done a couple of layers, and you know, it's not perfect, but I think it's primed enough to start actually getting colorful. I'm gonna think about a color palette, and yeah, I'm gonna test some maybe some acrylic gouache, my Holbein acrylic gouache, yeah, on this piece here, see how well it goes. And I'm excited to actually start painting it and making it beautiful, although it is nice white, but colors. Part of me was like, maybe I should have painted all the elements individually first and then put it together, but then I wouldn't have been able to like adjust with the flow and the colors and stuff like that. Here I am kind of putting together a little bit of a color palette. Every month on Patreon, I have a color palette parade section where I upload a new color palette, and it's sort of like an art challenge for the month. So all my patrons can take part and use this color palette to create an artwork in your own style. So I kind of like meshed the two things where I created a color palette for everyone on Patreon, and I also used that color palette for this artwork, so that's a bit of a fun crossover. I should also mention that this illustration is this month's Patreon reward, so you get a double-sided mini print with the finished illustration, and on the back of it is like a mishmash or a collage of sketches and that sort of thing leading up to the design of the final piece. And you also get a lovely vinyl sticker, and because it's a 3D artwork, I photographed it, and the sticker and the print, you know, it's a photo of a 3D thing, just like my childhood books. So it feels like you can reach in and touch it and feel it. So the stickers and the prints look 3D, and I'm just like absolutely chuffed with how they look, and I can't wait to send them out to you. So they're available this month. So if you become a patron within the month of February 2025, this month, then you get these goodies in the mail. They're Orange Bird tiers. So yeah. So while painting this, I was thinking about the way the colors would be arranged on the piece. I kind of started with the leaf base layer because I knew that this rusty browny green color would be the main color of the illustration. So I wanted to put the big main amount of color down first, and then slowly just like add little bits here and there. And the reason I decided to paint once I had already stuck everything down, rather than painting them first and then sticking them down, is so I could control how I wanted things to flow and stuff. I'm not really someone who plans, so if I was a planner, I would have definitely painted everything first and then stuck it down, but because I didn't know what I was going to be doing yet, I had to do it this way. Which was really fiddly because it is a 3D piece. I had to get in the weirdest angles and positions to try and paint as much of the underneath as possible. And that resulted in a lot of like accidental brush strokes in places they weren't meant to be. So always like going back and forth and cleaning things up, which was a bit annoying, especially on the colors that I mixed myself, which I do a lot. So it was very fiddly. Not pictured all of the extremely awkward angles that I got myself into to create this artwork and to get as much color across as much of the illustration as possible. I mean, if you look really, really, really closely at the original and get yourself into like some weird contorted angles, you will be able to see some white spots, I'm sure. But yeah, I tried my best. I tried my best. There were a few times where I felt like my head was upside down while I was painting it. But, you know, when I'm doing this sort of thing, I love to just put on an audiobook or a podcast or whatever and just like switch off, go into almost autopilot and just let my intuition run free and let my hand move faster than my brain sometimes. Yeah, I love doing this sort of thing, especially something like which is a little more simple. You know, I have the illustration out in front of me. I just have to then put colors down. It's almost like a coloring in book, but 3D right now for me. I pre-chosen the colors, which I don't usually do. I had pre-chosen the colors, illustration was there. I just had to sit back, listen to my audiobook and just fill it all in. There are a few times where I had painted a flower or painted something and I didn't like the way the color flowed with the rest of the illustration, so I had painted over it and whatnot. But in general, I just kind of let my intuition work. I let my brain do its thing and just, yeah, play with rhythm and flow. Rhythm and flow, that's my phrase. rhythm and flow in color, design, shape, line, yeah, all that kind of stuff. I chose to use the Holbein acrylic gouache because I love how pigmented it is. It's super bright and vibrant and gorgeous, and I also wanted something that was matte. I didn't want anything shiny. I'm not sure what real sculptors who use Super Sculpey use when painting their models or their creations or whatever. Probably some sort of enamel paint, I assume. But yeah, I wanted something that it still felt like my illustration. It still felt like I was painting on a wooden clay board or a piece of watercolor paper. I wanted it to feel like a little Sophie painting. And yeah, the texture of the gesso mixed with the 3D bits, but also there's a lot of flat surfaces as well, which allowed me to do some illustrative sections. Yeah, it was really lovely and like a very good little step into sculpting again. So I would really, really love to do some more sculptural illustrations like this. I almost used up all my block of Super Sculpey for this piece, but I would love to do a collection of smaller illustrations as well. So I have maybe perhaps gone to the art supply store and spent a lot of money on more polymer clay and all sorts of different things. So hopefully, you know, I'm definitely the kind of person that says I'm gonna do things and then I get bored of them and I never do them again. So who knows if I'll keep going, but I really, really want to keep going because I've been really, really loving sculpture. And it's just, yeah, sculpture just, it feels like me. It feels like little child Sophie in the best possible way. So I just added a few extra little illustrative details to kind of bring it all together to match with the little diamonds that I had painted on the leaf originally. I didn't feel much of that, but yeah, I feel like just a couple of these little leaf details, little flower details really kind of added the extra bit of Sophie vibe to the piece. And yeah, this is the final illustration slash sculpture. I still have to figure out how I'm going to mount it on the wall. That's a future Sophie problem. But for now, this is the piece and I hope you really like it. I had so much fun making it and I hope you can tell how much fun I had making it. Can't wait to make more. I can't wait to send you all the Patreon artworks and the stickers that go with this illustration. And just a reminder, if you want the double-sided mini print and the sticker, become an Orange Bird tier member of my Patreon anytime during Feb. And in the future, prints will be available for everyone as well. I ended up actually taking it into Photoshop and doing a little bit of a collage. I cut it up a little bit to kind of fit it on an A4 or A3 piece of paper. I'm really, really proud of it. And I still think it honors the sculptural part of it, but also honors the illustrative part of it. Yeah, anyway, that's my wee video. Thank you so much for being here. I adore your faces. See you next time. Okay, tooroo.